26 and 27. These are the words of Paul, but I think it's the heart of Christ. He says, be angry and do not what, Ignite Church? Okay, so let's read right off the bat. Paul is not saying to the church at Ephesus, don't be angry. He says you need to be angry. And I'll go ahead and say this, and several times I'll say this. I think one of the greatest problems with the church in America is that we are not angry enough about the right things. So some of us need to get angrier than we are. He says, be angry, but do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil. I didn't leave a blank for this, but some of you guys that are like me and you love Greek, the word for place is really interesting. If you want to circle that word place, it's the word in Greek topos, which is T-O-P-O-S. And what that means is it means like don't give the devil a room in your life. It's kind of where we get topographical. Like don't give him a place, a position in your heart. So be angry, do not sin. Don't give the devil a place in your life by which he can poison your life. You know, anger is something that all of us deal with. If you don't deal with anger, you're either very dead or very not human or, so we all deal with it. And when we really kind of are talking about anger, most of us are in two categories. Some of you may say you're not in either one of those. I'll say you're probably lying to yourself. But when it comes to anger, some of you are what I would call spewers with your anger. And if you don't know what a spewer is, when a spewer gets angry, you know they're angry. Because it's like it rises up out of the floor and it just comes spewing out of their mouth. What's going on? Like they tell you how they feel. They tell you what they think. They let you know what's going on. They spew it out. They're like a tornado. They rip through. They feel better after they've got it all out and the world is covered with the vomit of their anger. You know what I'm saying? So some of you, that's how you are. When you get angry, everybody knows you're angry. Some of the rest of you are more like me. I'm not a spewer, I'm a stewer, is what I am. And if you're a stewer, what happens to stewards, I think being a steward is actually worse. When we get angry, instead of letting people know that we're upset, instead of people letting know that we're angry, we just lie. I'm fine. Everything's great. Now, in my head, I am murdering you right now. That's good. Great. I love that you did that. Keep on going. So stewards, we internalize and we take our anger, instead of expressing it, we just push it down. We push it down deep and we push it down deep. And one of the problems of being a steward is that eventually you cannot push it down anymore, and it does come out, and sometimes it comes out at the wrong person. Because what happened is your boss drove you crazy on Monday, and your kid spilled a cup on the carpet on Friday, and you unload on your kid for spilling a cup when really you're angry at your boss. So being a steward is very dangerous because we push it and we push it, and eventually it's like, I can't push no more. It's kind of like Popeye, I can't stand no more, so we unload. Most of us are in one case. How many of you here in the presence of God, you're a spewer? People know when you're angry. You just kind of let it loose. Okay, some of you, amen, praise God. All right, anybody like me, you're kind of steward, you push it down deep. Keep pushing, baby. Yeah, okay. Both are a problem. I'm definitely a steward. My wife, I would say, and she's here and I love you, she's more of a spewer. Like I know when she's upset, and I love that about her because she doesn't lie to me. When I do something stupid, which happens every single day, she lets me know, and so we can address it. She only knows that I'm mad when I'm not talking to her because I can't shut up otherwise, and she has to guess, what did I do? I'm not telling you, because I'm stewing on it. So I appreciate the fact she's a spewer instead of a stewer. And some of you were saying, well, Jason, I'm neither one of those. Again, everybody, you're just a liar is what you are. You're a liar. Jesus got angry. And he got very passionately angry in a couple of moments in the New Testament. And so today we're going to really look at how he expressed his anger, because, I'm so thankful first that Jesus did get angry. So it's okay. It's okay to get angry. And I'm so glad he gave us a model of how we can do it in a way that's pleasing to God, in a way that's healing instead of hurtful to other people. So I'm glad you're here. So we're going to talk about, go ahead and if you will, turn with me to our first point. When Jesus was angry, he, number one, did these things. He stood strong for what was right when he was angry. When Jesus was angry, he was always angry about the right kind of things, and he was willing to stand firm and stand strong in those right things, no matter what anybody else was doing. And I love that about Jesus. Now, when you look at the narrative of the Gospels, when you look at the descriptions of Christ in all the letters of all the New Testament, something interestingly shows up. Jesus was angry frequently, but he never, ever, 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 ever was angry because someone insulted him, persecuted him, hurt him, maligned him. He always was angry when he saw someone hurting someone else or hurting God. That's the only thing that ever stirred his anger. And so one of the things I immediately was convicted of when studying for this was the fact that I get angry when I feel like people are doing me wrong. Jesus said, I'm never going to be angry about that because I'm a dead man walking anyway. You can do whatever you want to me, but if I see you hurting somebody that I love, if I see you maligning the God that I love, then, and only then, do I get angry. And so just so you kind of understand that's one of the big differences between my anger and his anger, is I get angry because sometimes I feel like people don't treat me right. Jesus didn't care how people treated him, but he cared how they treated you and how they treated God. It's a great story of this. John 2, starting with verse 13. I'm going to read it and we'll talk about it. It's a great story. It's a crazy story. It says this. It says, now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And he found in the temple those who sold oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers doing, what does it say, Ignite? Business. They're doing some business up in the temple. Okay, so let me kind of tell you what's going on in the story. This is right at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. He actually does this exact same thing that he's about to do in the temple. At the end of his ministry, it's found in the Gospel of Matthew. So he does it twice. And what has happened is he goes into the temple, and Jesus, he's looking around at the temple. There are people praying, all that's good. There are people worshiping, all that's good. And then he goes to the altar. And if you know anything about Israel, they would come together. And if you were an Israelite, you would bring with you when you went to the temple some doves, or an ox, or a lamb, or a bull, or a goat. You would bring an animal because the Israelites knew this to be true, and this is still true, y'all. For the price of sin to be paid, something has to die. Now for us, that was Jesus. But always throughout all of history, sin is so serious that anyone who sins, something has to die for that sin. The penalty of sin is death. And in the nation of Israel, they would bring an animal, and somehow symbolically, they would say, I deserve to die, but God, take this life instead. And they would kill the animals. That was a big part of being a pastor in the Old Testament. Praise Jesus, it's different today. You know, I mean, for real. Could you imagine, man, hey, pastor, and you're like, what's up? And your arms are covered. You know, like, animal parts. Like, that's what they did. So there was a part dedicated to that where people were bringing their sin offerings. And what was going on in the temple that drove Jesus crazy, we're going to see his anger in a minute, is people would bring their animals. And the priests, the people they trusted the most, would say, no, I'm sorry. That lamb you have, it has an imperfection. And in the book of Leviticus, it is very clear that your lamb is not good enough to be sacrificed, but you're in luck. I happen to have a lamb just for you, you know. And so I'll take your lamb and $20 and give you my lamb, and you can use that instead. And they were cheating the people out of their money. That's what was happening. That's what was in the house of God. The priests were cheating people out of their money, and they were saying that their animals were. Here's what happened. So I traded your lamb for my lamb, and guess what? Somebody else comes and they have a lamb. It's your lamb there, baby. That's what they were doing, like for real. Like your lamb that I just said wasn't good enough, now because it's in my cage, it is. Like they were doing that to people, and it drove Jesus crazy because these people were coming in faith to God, and they were being mistreated. And so look at what he does. It's very interesting. Verse 15, it says, when he made a whip of cords. Stop for a second. So Jesus comes in, he sees this going on. Let me just go up to here. So he goes over to the corner, not saying anything. There's like apparently some rope or something. He's braiding. A little arts and crafts, a little Martha Stewart on, you know, making a braid. He's just braiding this. What's he doing? Braiding. Gets long enough. And then he takes this rope that he has now made, this whip of cords, and look at what it says he does. He made a whip of cords, and he drove them out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen. He hit people, okay? When it says he drove people out, what Jesus did, he made the whip of cords, and then he went, he went crazy on people. Ninja style. Like, he was just like fruit ninja all over the place. Like, yeah, he went crazy. He was hitting people. He hit people. And apparently, angry Jesus is so scary that it scared out all the priests, and it scared out all the money changers, and there were temple guards with spears and swords, and guess what they did? They ran too! What? He was scary. He went Super Saiyan or something. I don't know. Like, yeah. Come here, you know, like he went crazy. So I want you to understand, if you deal with anger, Jesus, the God we serve and love, the man of grace and mercy, he is all that. He got angry enough to hit people. He hit people. When some of you are a little maybe old school, I think, you know, my parents never did this to me, but some of you had parents that, like, when you did something bad, they were going to whip you and you had to pick your switch. And so Jesus basically made a switch, and he's hitting people with it. He drove them out with the sheep and the oxen, and he poured out the money changers' money. So he took their bags, dumped all the money out on the ground, and then that's not enough. Flipped the tables too, just in case you didn't know by the hitting that I was angry. Now so he's really angry, y'all. He's really angry because that place, like instead of people looking forward to going to the house of God to worship Him, they knew that they were going to be robbed, and they had to do it with a smile on their face. So people were dreading having to go to the temple because, like, I know that when I get there, the priests are going to rob me. And he said, you're totally missing the heart of this place. And so what he says is, to those who sold doves, take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of merchandise. Now, in Matthew, any of you who remember the story, when he goes back, he says, this is supposed to be a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of what? Thieves. Yeah, one person remembers that story. So when he went back again, basically Jesus, at the end of his ministry, he's like, I've already been in here. I've already flipped over tables. I already tried to tell you what you were doing wrong. You've totally robbed this place from the house of prayer it's supposed to be. It's a den of thieves now. You're just robbers. He's a little gentler here in what he says. He's like, don't do this. Don't do this. He was very, very angry. And I think the church needs to get angry sometime. I think that all of you individually, you need to get angry about some right things instead of some wrong things. Me personally, I'll tell you one of the things that makes me very, very angry. I've spoken about this a lot, and you can kind of just see it by looking at me. I've always, kind of been a little smaller and been the odd man out. So like, when I see people that are excluded, when I see people that don't seem like they can feel included and brought in, like that stirs my heart. Like I cannot stand for somebody to be sitting at a table by themselves. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go sit with them. I cannot stand when I'm out in the lobby and I see somebody standing by themselves. You better believe, Pastor, I got you now. Like I'm like zoned in. You come like, no one can be by themselves. Like I can't stand it because I understand what it feels like to feel alone. So like that's my holy hurt. And as a matter of fact, this weekend, my daughter Gabby, who's beautiful and wonderful, and she's 8 years old. Like I actually had some of that anger towards her. She had a friend of hers stay the night on Friday night, and my daughter has gotten really into. I cannot remember the name of the show on Disney, but it's the one where it's like Bizarre Bar. Like, they make videos. They take these two little girls and they make all these YouTube videos. And so my daughter and her friend have really gotten into like making silly like musical song star videos about themselves. Doing like little So they've really gotten into that. And so they were making a video, and my 5-year-old son, who thinks that my 8-year-old daughter and her friend are so cool, they're making a video, and he just totally like rushes into our bonus room and like photobomb, like he just does it. She gets so mad at him, she like picks him up and throws him out of the room and locks the door. And so he's just like on the floor crying, and I hear him crying. I go up like, what's my say? She won't let me in the room, And my anger stirred up because it's like, no, like he just loves you. He just wants to be with you. And yes, he's gonna mess up your video. He will be messing up your videos for the rest of your life, baby girl. But you love him anyway. You include him in. And for the church, we're supposed to be the people that include everyone, love everyone. We don't care how much money you make. And we don't care what your job is. And we don't care what color your skin is. And we don't care what your accent's like. We love everyone. It's like that burns in me. What burns and stirs your anger? Are you only angry when someone does something against you? Or do you get angry over the things that angers God's heart? Because the word says we should be angry over those things and not angry over ourselves. And so, man, I want you to get to see Jesus, when he was angry for things that mattered. And we should be angry for things that matter. And the more I'm angry about the right things, the less I care when someone's not okay with me. So, do you stand strong for what is right? Number 2, guys, Jesus, man, when he was angry, he spoke truth even when it hurt. I love that. I've got a long way to go on that. I'm a people pleaser. So it's very hard for me to critique people and challenge people. That's really something that God has been working on with me, and I'm getting better. But it's very against my personality. Jesus, he had this amazing ability that he loved even the people he was angry with, but man, he would tell them the truth. And I appreciate that about Christ. As a Southerner, maybe it's a Southern thing, maybe it's not. I think it kind of is. As a Southerner, I want people to tell me when something's wrong with me. Like right now, if my fly is unzipped, someone please tell me. Everybody's looking now. Don't look too long. But if it's not right, if there's a booger on my face, it's not kind to secretly, hey, he has something on his face. It's kind to say, Jason, wipe your nose. And I'll be like, thank you. That's something I can do. Okay, that's the right thing to do. When you love someone and there's something wrong with their life, whether it be spiritually, relationally, emotionally, financially, whatever. When there's something wrong that they can make right, the loving thing to do is tell them. Amen. That's the loving thing to do. Now, it's not the fun thing to do, because when you say something's wrong with someone's life, most people get offended. So it's not the fun thing to do, but it's the loving thing to do. It's like, hey, look, this is here, and you can fix it if you will. And I love you enough that even if you're mad at me for a little while, I'm going to tell you that it's wrong so that you have the option and ability to make it right. Jesus, he was so good at this. In Matthew 23, he kind of unloads on the Pharisees. He's angry at them. And he's angry because for 3 years, he has illustrated so clearly that he is God wrapped in flesh, that he has come to save the world, that he wants to include them in the mission, and they just don't get it. The more miracles he does, the more they hate him. The more truth he speaks of God's word, the more they hate him. The more love he shows, the more they hate him. And finally, we see Jesus, he kind of unloads on him. He says, "Woe to you, you scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! For you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside is full of extortion and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of your cup and your dish, so the outside can be clean also. Woe to you, you scribes and you Pharisees, you're hypocrites! For you're like whitewashed tombs, which indeed, man, they appear beautiful outwardly, but inside they're full of dead men's bones and all kinds of uncleanness. Even so, you outwardly appear righteous, but inside you're full of hypocrisy and lawlessness." Now, you can imagine Jesus did not make any friends by this speech. Like, no one liked him more. Oh, thank you, Jesus, for telling me that basically I am like a complete liar. Like, no one wants to hear that, but it was true. It was true. The Pharisees, if you don't know who they were basically, the priests and the pastors, the really religious looking. They were great at looking like they had it together, but they were more messed up than anyone. And Jesus was saying, please, will you just admit you're a sinner so that I can be your Savior? Because what you're doing right now is like you're whitewashing a tomb. And back in those days, they buried people above ground. You had these magnificent structures, like they look beautiful, but inside, you know what's inside? Dead bones and worms and dust and mildew and rot. And that's what your heart looks like to God. You look beautiful on outside. Everybody looks, oh, magnificent. But inside that palace is nothing but dead things. He didn't do this to hurt them. He did this to try to help them. They needed to understand that the harder they pushed back against him, the harder they were pushing back against their God. And I'm challenged by this, guys. Like, do we love people enough to be the one to tell them truth even if it hurts them? And even if for a moment it hurts our relationship with them, but ultimately it helps lead them closer to Jesus. Because I'll tell you, from the stage, it's easy to say, I would rather all of you be with me for eternity in heaven and have nothing to do with me on earth than me not say what I need to say. You love me on earth and you're separated from me for all eternity. That's like, I'll pay that price anytime, publicly. But when you're looking me in the eye and I know something's wrong, it's hard. It's hard to do and hard to say. I'm getting better. There have been a few times in my life where like the Holy Spirit hasn't let me not say things. And one of those times was a couple years ago. I do a lot of marriage counseling at Ignite, and if any of you guys are walking through a difficult time in your marriage, I want to invite you to come and call our office and make an appointment with me or any of our other staff. Several of our staff are awesome and have strong marriages and love to talk to you. But I've been doing it for a long time. At Ignite, Satan is not killing people physically. He's trying to kill and destroy marriages. I was at Everett's Baptist Church before coming here. It was an older congregation. In 6 years, I did right around 60 funerals. At Ignite, I've been here now almost 7 years, and I think I've done 2 funerals. So we're not dying physically, but guess what? Satan's trying to kill your marriage, kill your relationships. And so I do a lot of counseling with couples. And a couple years ago, there was a couple. They were coming in with issues. They were talking. And as they began talking, I began sensing from the Holy Spirit that there was something going on with this guy that he wasn't admitting. As a matter of fact, that he was looking at porn and his wife didn't know. That's not something that you just want to bust out and say with no reason. And so I kind of was like resisting. And they were talking, and eventually, guys, this is just truth. Like, eventually, their voices sounded like Charlie Brown's mama. You know, wah, 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 wah. Like, I couldn't even hear what they were saying anymore because the Holy Spirit was saying, you need to confront this guy, you need to confront this guy, you need to confront this guy. So finally, I, stop them because this couple kind of started bickering. It kind of moved into bickering. And I was like, stop it. The problem is not what we're talking about. The problem is, and I pointed at the guys, the problem is you are addicted to pornography. You're looking at it, you've got it on your computer right now, and your wife doesn't know. You can hear a pin drop, of course. He turned as white as a ghost, and she turned as red as a hot tamale. Because, and it was true. It was true. It was completely true. He had just looked at pornography that day. He had a very serious issue with it. And he'd been able to hide it. He'd been very clever with hiding it. And they had never talked about it. And because truth was spoken, now that was a terrible night for him. I'm gonna be real with you. That was not a happy, let's make it up night. No, that was you. This sin has gone deeper than we can imagine. But that was a turning point in their story, in their marriage. Because as long as he was hiding that sin, there was something going on. That's why she knew there was a problem there. She didn't know what it was, but she knew there was a disconnect. She knew things were different than that's what it was. Some of you, you're going through something. It's time for truth to enter into your story so that you can deal with it and repent of it and turn to Jesus. And he was willing to speak truth even when it hurt. And that's the loving thing to do. So who are you speaking truth to? Who do you have in your life that you know you need to speak truth into their life so that their story can be changed? And you don't worry about the consequences. You leave those up to God. Because you're angry about what they're doing, but you're not telling them. Instead, you're talking about them when you should be confronting them and sharing with them truth. Number 3, guys. When Jesus was angry, he loved the people he was angry with. Oh, thank you. Even when Jesus was furiously angry with people, he loved not only the victims of the people that he was angry at, but he loved the people that he was angry with. He loved them all. And we see this very well in the story in Mark chapter 3. So it says, Jesus entered the synagogue again, and there was a man there who had a withered hand. So they, and that's the Pharisees again, those guys, those religious folks, they watched Jesus closely to see whether he would heal on the Sabbath so they might do what, Ignite? Accuse him. Okay, let me give you a little bit what's going on here. So Jesus was going to church. He was going to church. And the Pharisees and Sadducees who hated him, who were confronted by him, who could not stand him, they brought in a man to the church that had a withered hand. Intentionally. They were bringing this guy and putting him in the presence of Jesus because they knew that Jesus did miracles. And they wanted to see what Jesus was going to do because here's the deal. They thought they had him trapped. If Jesus sees this man with a withered hand and he does not heal him, then we can go out and say, he doesn't really love people like he says he does. But if he does heal them, this is Sabbath day. Sabbath was a Saturday. It's basically their Sunday. There was a rule in Israelite culture that on their Sabbath day, you could not heal. There were a lot of things you could not do, and healing was included. It was one of their rules. You cannot do this. It's work. It's supposed to be a day of rest. So if he doesn't heal him, he's not loving. If he heals him, he's a lawbreaker. He doesn't do what is right by God. So yeah, you got healed, dude, but you got healed by Beelzebub, the prince of demons. So they were trying to set him up. They were trying to set up Jesus. They go to church not to worship God, but to try to destroy Jesus. Okay? So Jesus is there. In verse 3, let's see how he reacts. He said, that means Jesus, he said to the man who had the withered hand, step forward. In other words, Jesus is we're not going to hide this. We're going to bring this out in light of everyone. Come forward. Then he looks at the Pharisees and says to them, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do evil, to save a life or to kill? But they kept silent. And so what Jesus does is so beautiful. I mean, he's God. He knows what's going on. So he calls this guy forward and he says, look, I know you were brought here to set me up. And he looks at the people who were trying to set him up listen, you came into this church today with intention to accuse me and kill me. Because you know I'm going to help this guy. Is it better to help somebody on a Sabbath day or try to kill somebody on a Sabbath day? Tell me. Right here, we're going to make it everybody's business. And those guys were we weren't expecting that. We thought you were going to take him to the side and heal him, and we were going to be able to say, look at what he's doing, he's a lawbreaker. And now they're called out and they look like idiots. Jesus totally called them out. And then look at verse 5. This is the key verse that I wanted to share in this story. It says, when Jesus looked at them with anger, so he was angry at them, being grieved by the hardness of their hearts, he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And that man with that withered hand, he stretched it out. And his hand was restored as whole as the other. That part, man, there, I love that part. It says, he looked around at those Pharisees and Sadducees and those priests and those girls. He looked at them with anger, and he was mourning them and grieving, don't you know who I am? I love you. I'm angry because you don't know who I am. And I've just tried and tried to show you my love and show you my miracles and show you my teachings. Don't you know who I am? I saw you on the day that you sprang forth from your mother's womb. I'm the one that put all the hairs on your head. I know you and I love you. And you're trying to kill me in church. He was grieved. He was grieved at them. He loved them. And I think it's so important for us to understand. For everyone that is angry at you or you're angry at them, for everyone who persecutes you, for everyone who's ever hurt you or lied about you or tried to set you up on social media or done anything to your life, they all have a story. They all have a story. And they all have a reason. And probably for many of them, the reason why they're trying to hurt you is that they're hurting themselves. And so instead of being angry at them, can we be angry at the one who brought hurt into their lives? And that guy's name is Satan. He is the one that is darkness. He is the one that drives good men and women to do very evil, wicked things. And Jesus is like, I love you. I hate what you're doing. I love you. And I wish you'd see who I am. You know, all of us have people in our life that make our life hard. If you don't have anybody like that in your life, it's because you're that person that makes somebody else's life hard. We all have that person, you know. It's like, yeah, they're just not on our side. They're not for us, and they just make life hard. I've had several of them throughout my life. And when I was a kid, the guy who was probably most that, and I love him to death today, was a guy named John Coltrane. John was like my physical opposite. I was born like, 2 centimeters tall and half a pound. And John was born like, 100 pounds like from day one. Like, he's a giant. Like, he's like 6'7". He's a big guy. He's always like, and John was the guy that like in our neighborhood, he was like the guy that threw me in the ditch and stuff. Like he was that kid that's like he was bigger and he knew it and he was going to get what he wanted. He was the guy that would steal your bike. He was that guy. He was just that guy. And there were so many times that if eyes could kill, he'd be dead at dirt. Like if I was Superman and laser, you'd be laser John. Like, I know John today. He's such a great guy. Such a great guy. He was in the same class as me and had a reunion. Man, like, I'm so glad God didn't give me laser eyes because like he had a story. He had a story, and in a lot of ways, I think his hurt was reflected on other people. And the person that's driving you crazy, instead of like hating them, can we begin to pray for them? Instead of wishing them ill, can we ask God to bless them and do them good? Because as we pray for them and love them, I believe it changes the nature of our relationship with them. Jesus didn't just say, turn the other cheek, y'all. I mean, most of us know that. Jesus, when someone strikes you on one cheek, you turn the other. We know that. Jesus went beyond that. He said, not only do you do that, but you pray. You pray for those who persecute you. You bless those who curse you. And you do good things for those who do evil to you. So if someone's making your life hard, go take them a present today. And they're going to be like, what in the world's wrong with you? Jesus. Like, pour like hot coals on their head. I don't care what you do to me, I'm going to do nothing but love you. One of the guys that really lived this out, other than Christ, the guy who's one of my favorite pastors. His name is Charles Spurgeon. He's a pastor of the past. He was kind of around in the early 1800s in England. He was the first mega church pastor. He spoke to 20,000 people without a microphone. How do you do that? I don't know how he did that. He was just a powerful guy. If any of you come from traditional church like me and wonder why do men wear suits in church, Charles Spurgeon was the very first pastor who dared wear a suit in the pulpit. Back in those days, everyone wore a robe, and he was like, "Nuh-uh, I'm going to dress like everybody else and wear a suit." Now we wear jeans. Praise Jesus. It's so much more comfortable. But so he was kind of controversial. And one of the things that he said that I'll never forget, he said in an interview, because people were talking about how hated he was. And he was hated by some people. He said this. He said, no matter how many shots my enemies fire at me, I will never fire back. Instead, I'm going to soak up the iron from their bullets and grow stronger. And I love that. He's like, I don't have to fire back at them. I'm just going to take their hate and take their misunderstanding and take their persecution, and I'm going to have bones of steel and be strong to do what God's called me to do. It's not worth the time to fire back. And so, brothers and sisters, if somebody's making your life hard, don't fire back. You love them. You pray for them. And you wish good upon them. He loved the people he was angry with. Now, finally, guys, he did those things. This is what he didn't do, very briefly. What Jesus didn't do in his anger. Number one, he didn't hurt others though he could. They deserved it. They were asking for it. And there were many times where Jesus could have unleashed his power in an incredible way, and he restrained himself. And this is one story. It's a lesser-known story, but it's awesome. You all need to go and read the entirety of the story later today. Luke 4, 28 and 30. Jesus basically was in church again. He opened the scroll of Isaiah, and Isaiah was talking about the Messiah. He read the scroll. He said, this prophecy is being fulfilled in me. And this is the reaction he got. He said, so all those in the synagogue, when they heard these things, they were filled with wrath. And they rose up and thrust Jesus out of the city. And they led him to the brow of the hill on which their city was built, so they could throw him over the what, Ignite? They were going to throw him off a cliff. Okay? It's serious now. It's serious. And then verse 30. It's a little verse. It's so easy to pass by if you're doing your reading in this. It says, then passing through the midst of them, he went on his way. And so I want you guys to just imagine this. Jesus is saying this very controversial thing. The people get angry. And the synagogue was a church. They didn't have denominations in Christ's day. All the Israelites came together in a town to worship. So even if it was a small town, there would be at least this many people in church, in one church. You know, so it was several hundred people. Jesus makes them mad. Now, I'm pretty quick and sneaky. You know, that I missed the camera on. But if everyone here was angry at me and bum rushed the stage, I think you could catch me. Like, I think if everybody came at me at one time, like, I'd be out the back door as quick as I could go, you know. But like, I think if you all rushed me, you could catch me. So they basically do that. They bum rush him. They pick him up, put him on the, hey, you know, have Jesus. They're going to throw him off the cliff. You know, do not pass go. Do not get $200. You're dead. You're going to kill him because they're so mad at him. And then it says, all of a sudden, he passed through the midst of them and went on his way. How did he do that? I wonder. This is one of those times like I wish I was a person in the crowd. Like, did he Houdini it? Woo! And like he's a mile. Hello! Like, did he do that? Maybe. Did he all of a sudden become like a ghost and they just couldn't hold him? And he's just walking through them? Maybe. Did he like all of a sudden, you know, become Superman? And like, man, if Superman wants to walk through you, he walks through you. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like an irresistible force. You cannot stop him. He's just, you know, like, did he just walk through them? I don't know. But they were going to throw him over the cliff, and then he just walks away. Supernatural moment. But so he did that, but you know what he didn't do? He didn't throw them off the cliff. And he could have. And he would have been right to do it because you know what they were doing? They were saying that you are not God, and he was. You are a liar, and he had truth. You are the enemy of God when he was the only friend of God in that whole church. He could have killed all of them, and I don't think God would have held the sin against him. They deserve to die, just like we do when we blaspheme Jesus. They deserve to die. And if it had been us, we probably would have taken some of those people and thrown them off the cliff. This is what happens when you stand against me. Woo! And he could have, but he didn't. And so in our anger, please, never let your anger be an excuse to hurt people. Because you're righteously angry doesn't mean you have the right to hurt anyone. Jesus was righteously angry there. And he passed through the people and went on his way. Number 2, guys, what he didn't do? He didn't allow his hurt to hinder his compassion. And I'm so thankful for that. Jesus never forgot that his mission was a mission of salvation and healing and peace and reconciliation. His mission was one that brought the world closer to God instead of pushing it apart from God. He never forgot that even when he was angry. And in the story, we see this so well. Luke 22, 48 and 51. Many of you probably know some of the stories. This is a part of the whole crucifixion and the past, you know, the last days of Jesus' story. It says, Jesus, he said to him, Judas, are you, who was one of his disciples, remember Judas, he was a disciple. Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Let me stop there for 1 second. Here's what happened if you don't remember the story. Jesus, it was before the crucifixion, Judas went and sold Jesus out for 30 pieces of silver. And what he said is, listen, the way you'll know that it's Jesus for the soldiers to arrest him is I'm going to go up to the man I kiss, that's Jesus. So he took the money, he led the soldiers up, and he went to Jesus. This guy who for 3 years had been with Jesus, had loved Jesus, had seen the miracles, had heard the teachings. This guy goes up and he says, Rabboni, Rabboni, teacher, teacher. He goes, he embraces him, and he kisses him. Think about the slap of face to God that was. Like, I trusted you. I loved you. I breathed the Spirit of God upon you. I poured my miracle power into you. I shared everything I was with you. Remember, Jesus was celibate. He never was married. Like, his disciples were his family. And this member of his family just totally stabbed him in the back. He's going to have him arrested and have him killed. And he does it by a kiss. How insulting. I'm going to use a method of showing love to show my hate. So continuing the story. When those around him, the other disciples, saw what was going to happen, they see the soldiers, they know what's going to happen. Look what they say to Jesus. Lord, shall we strike with the sword? And one of them, this is Peter, he doesn't wait for permission. He struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. And Jesus answered and said, permit even this. And he touched that man's ear and he healed him. He had just had his heart ripped to shreds by someone he trusted. And instead of giving these soldiers what they deserve and Judas what he deserves and letting everybody know who they're messing with, he heals the person that's trying to kill him. Love. I want that. I want that. Because again, in that moment, let's just be real, y'all. In that moment where your best friend has just betrayed you and you know they're going to haul you off and kill you, all of us, we would have taken care of that business. We would have taken care of those soldiers. I'm a huge Uber nerd. There's a movie that came out a little too late to be a part of our At the Movie series. It's called X-Men Apocalypse. If you like superhero movies, it's actually really good. But there's a scene in that movie that's like the opposite of this scene. There's a guy there in the X-Men movie. It's called Magneto. He's a bad guy. He has the power of magnets because the comic book writers are very creative. Magneto, magnet. So in this movie, Magneto, who's a bad guy, is actually like not being a bad guy for a while. He has a job. He marries a woman. He has a beautiful daughter. And he's like living a peaceful life. And one day, an earthquake hits the factory he's working at, and a piece of machinery falls down and is about to crush somebody. And Magneto, in kindness and compassion, reaches out with his magnetic powers and stops the metal from hitting the guy. And everyone sees that he did it. So they all know that he's kind of a mutant and got powers. And so he goes to his wife, says, we got to get out of here. Where's our daughter? She was playing in the woods. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Like, he hears his daughter scream because the police have come to arrest him. And the police are really smart. They don't have any metal because they have heard that he has power over metal. And one of the police officers is holding like a fiberglass bow and arrow. And they're going to arrest him. And he goes and says, like, I'll submit myself to you. Just take me away, but don't hurt my daughter. Because they have his daughter. And they let the daughter go, and she grabs onto her mother. And as that happens, one of the guys, in fear, lets go of the arrow. And the arrow goes, and it strikes his daughter through the back, goes all the way through her body, and hits his wife in the chest. Both of them die. Okay, so he was trying to do the right thing, and here they've killed the people he loved the most right in front. So he's holding his wife and his daughter, and when his daughter kind of rolls over, there was a locket he had given her. And when he gave her the locket, he promised that they'd be together forever. And it's made out of metal. And what he does is he's there and he's weeping,